The courtroom fell silent as the verdict was announced. Mike Wolfe, the face of American Pickers, was found guilty in connection with the death of his longtime co-star and business partner, Frank Fritz. The man once revered for unearthing forgotten treasures now faced his own ruin. From household name to convicted felon, Wolfe's dramatic fall from grace sent shockwaves through the public and the entertainment world alike. So, what really happened behind the scenes of the show? What drove this seemingly indestructible friendship to such a tragic and irreversible end? Stick with us until the end of today's video to explore the answer. But before we begin, subscribe to our channel, All Profiles, so you won't miss any updates about your stars. Frank Fritz's passing shocked fans everywhere. It wasn't just the loss of their cherished show, but also the unsettling truths that gradually came to light. Frank, who was the heart of the American Pickers reality TV series, left the show quietly, burdened with unseen physical and mental scars. Reports indicated he suffered a severe stroke, leading to his withdrawal from the public eye. However, as investigations deepened, more peculiar details surfaced. Medical records didn't align with the evidence found at the scene. Some accounts suggested Frank wasn't only troubled by health issues but also lived in fear. Frank confided in a friend that he felt he was being followed and mentioned people trying to silence him. Initially, these were dismissed as symptoms of chronic depression and anxiety. But everything changed when the autopsy revealed poison traces in his blood. Mike Wolfe initially seemed distraught over Frank's death, appearing visibly shocked and emotional in the media. Yet sharp-eyed investigators noticed inconsistencies in his statements, the timeline, and mysterious financial dealings. Clues began to form a disturbing puzzle: an unusual money transfer, a disabled surveillance camera the night Frank was found unconscious, and a strange DNA sample at the scene. Police started probing the true nature of the relationship between the two. Although they appeared as close friends and TV partners publicly, there were arguments and irreconcilable differences behind the scenes. Frank felt deserted and replaced, leading him to increasingly question Mike's loyalty. Meanwhile, Mike was pushed to his limit by the prospect of Frank returning to reclaim his former position. The trial stretched on for weeks, featuring chilling evidence and shocking testimonies from those familiar with both men, until the verdict was finally delivered. However, before justice could be fully served, Mike Wolfe, once an icon, collapsed, taking all his unfinished secrets to the grave. The question lingers: is this truly the conclusion, or just a glimpse into the darker depths of a television world riddled with broken friendships, fleeting fame, and bitter betrayal? When news of Frank's sudden passing at home emerged, the public was deeply saddened. Tributes flooded social media, remembering Frank as the heart of the show, a gruff yet likable man, perfectly contrasting Mike Wolfe's gentle and charming demeanor. But just 6 weeks after the funeral, a discreet investigation commenced in Iowa. Initially, it began with a small question when a coroner noticed something amiss in the autopsy report. The hospital's initial toxicology report uncovered a disturbing revelation. Frank had tested positive for fentanyl, not just in small amounts, but in a dose strong enough to be fatal. The drug has the potential to stop breathing, paralyze the nervous system, and cause death within minutes. However, Frank was never known to use street drugs. He lived in seclusion during his recovery, avoiding public attention. So, how did fentanyl enter his system? This mystery remained unsolved until Frank's death. At that point, the medical examiner's office took action. A comprehensive autopsy was conducted, including tissue analyses, blood tests, and toxicology screenings. Every detail was scrutinized. The final verdict was shocking. Frank had been exposed to a synthetic variant of fentanyl that was 40 times more potent than heroin. It was neither prescribed nor available in any medication, and it certainly wasn't self-administered. It had been injected into his body. Frank's family and friends were adamant. He had always feared needles, even getting anxious over a flu shot. He only used medication when absolutely necessary and never used anything that required injection. The notion that Frank would willingly inject himself with a lethal dose of opium was unimaginable to those who loved him. Then came a chilling discovery: a small, nearly invisible puncture wound on Frank's upper thigh, only noticeable once his clothes were removed. This detail transformed the incident from an accident to a murder case. Following a detailed search of Frank's residence, Mike Wolfe was discreetly arrested, avoiding media attention. He is now charged with first-degree murder and attempting to falsify evidence. The once adored face of Mike Wolfe now appears tired and worn. His familiar smile has vanished, replaced by deeper lines around his eyes and a gaze filled with loss. Mike adamantly denies all allegations. During his initial hearing, he declared his innocence, arguing that the evidence against him is purely circumstantial. The ultimate decision will be made in court, where the unvarnished truth will emerge. With Frank's death and the revelation about fentanyl, a landmark trial is set to begin, seeking justice for Mike Wolfe, a former icon of a national TV show. Prosecutors leaned heavily on the compelling evidence presented, asserting that Mike Wolfe's desire for control transcended mere habit, evolving into a distorted obsession. To him, Frank was no longer a trusted partner, but an impediment, a thorn in his side, obstructing his ambitions for complete domination of the empire he yearned to possess. A clinical psychologist, summoned by the prosecution, provided an in-depth analysis of Wolfe's behavior using testimonies, interviews, and recordings. He characterized Wolfe as displaying typical traits of narcissistic personality disorder, including arrogance, a lack of empathy, an obsession with control, and an unquenchable desire for admiration at any cost. The courtroom was tense as a recording was played, capturing Mike's emotionless voice referring to Frank as a burden during a private meeting. In an email to his business partner, he stated, "When this is all mine, we can finally scale without any obstacles." It was clear he wasn't referring to the show, but to Frank himself. The prosecution accused Wolfe not only of murder, but also of framing the entire case as a calculated business decision, a final step in a series of actions to remove any barriers to his plan. The smile that once charmed audiences nationwide and secured him lucrative contracts and millions of dollars had vanished. In court stood Mike Wolfe, exposed under the scrutiny of justice. Every private thought, every calculated move, every ruthless ambition was laid bare. Detectives were closing in. Just 3 weeks after Frank's death, Wolfe had discreetly filed legal documents to gain control of Frank's likeness and signature. Simultaneously, his attorney filed a request to remove Frank from ownership of antique archaeology, a move that further fueled suspicions. The autopsy report revealed a small puncture wound resembling a needle mark on Frank's upper thigh, an unusual spot for self-injection, especially given his weakened state post-stroke. The fentanyl levels in his system were lethal, indicating the dose was administered deliberately rather than accidentally. As Mike Wolfe sat quietly in court, evidence accumulated: truck footage, digital records, witness accounts, financial incentives, the coroner's findings, and most notably, his silence. No rebuttal, no emotion, just a prolonged silence since Frank's passing. Formal charges were announced: first-degree murder, 2 counts of obstruction of justice, and 1 count of unauthorized use of a deceased person's digital identity. Mike Wolfe was denied bail through his attorney. Mike's attorney issued his first statement: "These allegations are entirely false. Mr." Wolfe cherished Frank like a brother and is profoundly saddened by his passing. He is fully cooperating with the investigation. We are confident that once all facts are presented, the truth will be revealed. During the trial, the jury was presented with evidence showing that in the year leading up to Frank's death, Mike Wolfe had taken calculated steps to seize full control of the American Pickers brand. He had discreetly reorganized his business structure, altered his contract with the History Channel to exclude Frank from the show, and secured rights to manage revenue and distribution should Frank become uninvolved. Wolfe's defense claimed these were sensible business decisions, made in response to Frank's declining health and departure from the program. However, an email dated 6 weeks prior to Frank's stroke told a different story. In it, Wolfe referred to Frank as a burden and stated that once this issue was dealt with, the path would be clear for unhindered expansion. Another email shown in court revealed plans for a new solo venture called Mike Wolfe, set to launch just 3 weeks after Frank's passing. These revelations convinced the jury that Wolfe's actions were driven by more than just business interests. Crucially, GPS data also placed Wolfe's custom black Mercedes Sprinter van near Frank's residence from 1:36 to 1:46 a.m. on the night of the incident. Those 10 minutes, prosecutors argued, were all it took for Wolfe to administer a fatal dose of the drug to Frank. Emotions ran high when the prosecution brought Frank's sister, Frank Fritz, to the witness stand. Speaking gently but with conviction, she recounted how deeply hurt Frank had been after being removed from the show. She explained that his physical condition had worsened, but it was his mental state that truly deteriorated. He frequently confided in her that Mike no longer cared and simply wanted him out of his life. A major twist followed when the defense introduced a handwritten note discovered on Frank's desk. In the letter, Frank voiced his fear that Mike might come after him and warned that if anything happened, it wouldn't be accidental. But it was the testimony of the next witness that left the courtroom in stunned silence. Elaine Temple, Frank's neighbor, appeared visibly anxious as she testified. She said she couldn't sleep the night of the incident and, peering out her window, spotted a truck she recognized from television. A man stepped out and approached Frank's side door without knocking. After standing there briefly, He walked around toward the back of the house. When presented with a lineup photo, Elaine identified Mike Wolfe, stating she believed it was him, though she couldn't say with absolute certainty. She testified that the man's posture and movements matched what she had seen of Wolfe on TV. The defense attempted to challenge her credibility by questioning the visibility that night and the accuracy of her memory, but the impact of her account had already been felt. The pieces were gradually fitting together to reveal a chilling and grim reality. The most poignant moment for the defense occurred when Mike Wolfe took the stand. His lawyer admitted it was a risky move, but Mike was resolute in his decision. He slowly approached the witness stand, no longer the confident TV host America once knew. His voice initially trembled, but he soon regained his composure. "We were like brothers," Mike stated. "We created something special together, but things became complicated. Fame changes people. Money distorts relationships. I may not have handled it well, but I never intended to hurt Frank." He clarified the text messages found on his personal phone. "That was when I was angry. The stress from work made me lose control. I said things I regret, but that doesn't mean I killed him. I miss Frank every day. We had our disagreements, but I swear I would never harm him. I couldn't live with myself if I did." However, those explanations failed to convince the jury. The evidence against Mike Wolfe was too strong and consistent. After weeks of debate in a stuffy courtroom where time seemed to drag on, all eyes were on Mike Wolfe, the man who had been a national television icon, now standing motionless like a statue. Cold light illuminated his pale face. Then the judge's deep, decisive voice shattered the tension. In the courtroom, the verdict was delivered. Michael Wolfe was found guilty. A collective gasp swept through the room, chilling everyone present like a sudden gust of icy wind. All attention remained fixed on Wolfe as people searched his face for any reaction, remorse, rage, anything. But he didn't move. His expression was blank, his eyes fixed and unblinking. Then, after what felt like a long pause, he finally blinked. It was a slow, weighted blink, as though his mind was struggling to grasp a devastating reality. And then he crumpled completely, overcome by shock. His knees gave way and his large frame dropped to the hard courtroom floor before anyone could intervene. A scream broke the stunned silence. For a few brief seconds, the room stood frozen, as if time had been suspended. Then everything erupted into chaos. Chairs scraped, footsteps pounded, and cries of alarm filled the space. The medical team quickly sprang into action, rushing to his side. They began chest compressions, doing all they could to revive the man who had just been declared guilty. An oxygen mask was swiftly strapped onto his pale, drained face. Urgent voices filled the courtroom, echoing with frantic questions. Is there a pulse? What's his blood pressure? Somebody call an ambulance. Yet, beneath the rising panic, a harsh reality began to settle over the room. The man who had once stood as a symbol of rediscovering lost treasures, who had built a television legacy out of rusty antiques and forgotten artifacts, now lay broken, reduced to a tragic shadow of himself. He had become a living relic, the embodiment of how ambition twisted by greed and cold determination can lead to utter ruin. Mike Wolfe had fainted in front of everyone the instant the guilty verdict was pronounced. Word of his dramatic fall traveled faster than wildfire, stunning fans and critics alike. What once seemed like wild internet speculation had now turned into a grim and undeniable truth. A show that had captivated millions, a partnership that once appeared unshakable, had descended into darkness, betrayal, and death. Mike Wolfe's conviction marked more than just the end of a man. It signaled the collapse of an entire brand, an image once built on camaraderie and charm. Once cherished by viewers worldwide, Mike had now become a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the devastating cost of chasing fame, fortune, and power beyond the bounds of morality. The case surrounding Frank Fritz hit like a gut punch to the global public's faith in familiar faces, as the man held responsible wasn't a stranger, but a supposed brother, a best friend who had shared years of success and laughter with the victim. Wolfe's sudden fainting in the very room where justice was delivered cast a long, lingering shadow. It happened at the precise moment the truth came to light, as though the verdict itself was too much for him to bear, a final, crushing blow. And in that frozen, surreal moment, the man who once symbolized the pursuit of forgotten beauty through old relics had himself become one, a painful monument to misguided ambition, fractured loyalty, and choices that could never be undone. That's a wrap for today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you found it interesting and want to keep exploring more incredible stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, All Profiles, and turn on the notification bell. Until next time, take care and see you soon.